In the last video, we discussed what we think is truly a groundbreaking device in the world of swimming. And we've incorporated that device into our regular coaching here at Do3. Now we're talking about the EO Swim Better. And if you want to see a summary about the Swim Better and what it can do to help improve your swimming, click the link in the description below. Now this video is more of a deeper look into what the EO Swim Better can do, and we show you some examples of how we use it to improve our swimmers. If you watch through to the end, we'll give you details about how you can be in with a chance of picking up a free swim dynamics assessment with us at Do3. So let's take a look. So let's start by setting the scene. You're a swimmer who has been looking to improve for a while, and you're at a plateau in your development. Now this is really common for swimmers, and it can happen to experienced swimmers as well as those newer to the sport. These plateaus can be extremely frustrating, and it's normal and all part of the developmental process. As coaches, our job is to help you push through them, and that's usually through adjustments in training, whether it be through volume or technical work, or of course a combination of any of these. Up until recently, technique feedback has largely been given based on what the coach sees and what they consider to be the areas of the stroke which are preventing the swimmer from going faster. Coach feedback is largely based on their experience and their own interpretation of what they're seeing. This can vary widely from coach to coach and can often be based on what the coach thinks they are seeing under the water. What a coach doesn't know, until now that is precisely when and where and how much power is being generated and in which direction. The EO Swim Better now gives access to this vital information in a way we've never seen before. And in this video, we're going to take a closer look at some swimmers from our squad and highlight the ways that we're working to make improvements based on what we see. Now, just to give you some perspective, this is our squad, and it's made of amateur athletes of all standards, from newbies right the way through to world and European age group triathletes. First of all, the EO Swim Better gives you access to a huge amount of information. And what we've found is that you can get lost in a rabbit hole of detail. So we've tried to filter this down to the key elements that we feel are going to get the swimmer the biggest improvements. With this in mind, some of the pages and elements on the EO software that you're about to see will be briefly touched on, as we'll focus on the pages and the information we think are going to give us the best results. So let's take a dive into the software. Okay, so let's start by taking a look at the first page in the EO software, and we have the stroke rate and force tab at the top here. So what this is showing is 1, 2, 3, 4 at the bottom. That's 4 laps. So she did 4 laps or 4 lengths. And we've got 2 bars on each. So an orange coloured bar and a blue bar. The orange is the left-hand side and the blue is the right-hand side. And the height of these bars indicates power. So over on the left-hand side, we've got a number which is the force number. So how much power effectively is going through the hand. Over on the right-hand side, we've got stroke rate, and that's what this green line signifies at the top here. So as you can see quite clearly, this particular swimmer has a more powerful left arm or left stroke than the right-hand side, and that's across all 4 lengths, and that's quite clear to see there. So that's pretty much all we're seeing on this page. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on every single page, because this has got so much data that is going to be it's taken several hours to get through this. So let's just summarize and go to the important bits. So the next page, the next tab at the top, I should say, is the force field tab. And once this loads up, again at the bottom here, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 for the 4 laps. So we've got it on lap 1 at the moment. And what you can see here is each one of these little lines is a single stroke in that particular lap. So if we just isolate, if we turn off the left, just left with the right, and what's interesting is that it's quite widely spread, look. So we've got quite a wide spread of strokes across each of the strokes for that particular lap. Put the left back on, and you can see it's kind of right side dominant. So even the left-hand side has got a lot over to the right, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, because that's one of the things we kind of picked up. At the top here, we've got, this is the power number. So the average impulse is 229 on the left and 178 on the right. And what's really interesting and really powerful with this is the propulsive numbers. So got propulsive power. So of the 100% of this swimmer's power, 54% or 54.6% is going into propulsion. What's really interesting here is that 31% of it is going into a downward kind of force. We've got some left and right. We've got a bit of hand drag and actually some upward force as well. So that's how things are distributed. And clearly, we want the propulsive element, the percentage on the propulsive side, to be as high as possible. So we're getting as much of that power, that force, into propulsion. So they're the kind of numbers that we keep an eye on. If we just scan across the different lengths here, those numbers will change a little bit from, I think it's 57 propulsion on that one, 53. So they'll probably average, low 50s across all of the 4 laps. And what we can also do on this page is we can isolate. So we could switch off the left, for example. And what's quite interesting on here is that the right-hand side has less power. So overall power than the right has less overall power than the left, but 66.7% of that is being used for propulsion. So that's a good number. So if we swap these around here, so albeit the left has more power at 2.01, it's only 43.8% is going into propulsion. There's a lot more pushing down. So there's obviously something going on the left-hand side, which is causing a lot of that propulsion to be left, and looks like most of it has been swapped to downward power. All right, so that's what's kind of showing. We start to build up a picture of this particular swimmer. That's what we're seeing so far. Stroke path and hand velocity. So just wait for this to load up here. Now, this is a really interesting one. Again, we've got the 4 laps at the bottom there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And each one of these, every single one of these is a stroke. Now, there's a lot of strokes to play with. There's a lot of laps to play with. So we're not going to go through every single one of these. But what we're looking for really is patterns and things that are happening across each particular stroke. There will be some differences whether they're breathing left or right. So there will be some differences because they will be moving their body differently depending on where they are in the breathing cycle. But just starting on the left-hand side here, we've got side-on view. So what this little red line here, or the red dot, I should say, is the entry point into the water, hand entry point. And then we've got a bit of a tracking forward motion. It's called glide in software here. So this is the timeline, and you can scroll along this. And as you go through the time, you can see 0.31 of a second. You can see that the hand goes deeper and tracks slightly forward. And this scale at the bottom here is centimeters. So as we progress through, obviously it goes down deep and then comes back up, and the grey line is the recovery. So you've got kind of a large oval kind of shape on this particular stroke. If we just go on to a different stroke here, this is a right arm stroke because it's a blue one. Similar kind of shape actually, so it's still kind of a long, tall oval. On the overhead, so this is looking down on top of the swimmer as though the camera was above their back. So again, this is the right-hand side. We can see the recovering on the right. Hand entry on the right side. And what's really interesting with this swimmer, and this is one thing that we did speak to them about, is that you can see that the hand tracks forward and sweeps out left quite a long way, actually onto the left-hand side. So it's slicing out. If you think about that in conjunction with going deep and then going, this is a head-on, as though the swimmer is coming directly towards you. So the left is actually the right, if that makes sense. You can see that they're slicing sideways and down. And we'll have a closer look at that in terms of the force versus time element as well, which will make sense when we have a look at it in a minute. So tracks forward, slices forward, and then we've got a fairly straight line on the way back as the swimmer pulls back, and then obviously back onto the right-hand side. So you can see that they're pulling, some of the right-hand stroke is pulling on the left as they pull through beneath the body. This dotted line here is the center line of the swimmer. And the right-hand side, we've got a head-on image. So again, recovering over the water. If we just put this back to the beginning here. So the enter the water, and then there's a big slice left. So this is 10 centimeters. So we're going maybe 50 centimeters from one side to the other, and then going down deep, coming back onto the right-hand side, and then coming back up again. So that's what you see on the stroke path and hand velocity side of things. So that's really interesting. And again, you start to build up a picture about what's going on here. And again, that will come more clear when we get to the stroke path and force versus time pages. So consistency, we'll just skip through this one. Consistency is every single stroke laid on top of themselves, or on top of each other, I should say. So if you select all left, you can see if the strokes are following a similar path, and they are. The more similar they are, then obviously they'll be kind of closer bunched, and it'll almost, in an ideal world, they'd all be on top of each other. But of course, it's there's lots of kind of natural movement in the water, which is going to give us this kind of slight discrepancy. But you can see in general, the hand paths are all following a very similar path. We drop the right-hand side on top. You can see the right is quite different. So the right slice is left, and then comes right, and that's the one we've just seen actually on the other page. So slice is left, and actually the left-hand side slice is slightly right. So you can see that they're both coming towards the center line. But the left quickly comes back onto the left side again, and then over to the right towards the finish, and then back out again. Big slice. There's the big slice we saw on the right-hand side down here, heading over towards the center line. So that's what we're saying. The consistency on that particular tab. Stroke phases is a breakdown of how much time is spent in each phase. I don't spend a huge amount of time on this page actually, but it's interesting to have a look at, and maybe it's something worth monitoring going forwards. So the glide percentage at the top there. So this is lap 4, the average for lap 4. So 14% glide, and the glide is like the extension at the front of the stroke. 14% and 13% on this particular lap. 65% and 68% in the pull phase. The pull phase is once the extension is finished, the phase where the hand is coming back, all the way back until it gets the exit point. So that's 68% of the stroke. And then the recovery is 21% and 19%. And then if you want to go into super fine detail, you can look at that on each individual stroke. So again, some good to know information. Now, this is where we start to get really interesting. Now, the EO Swim Better has the facility to synchronize video, so we get a really good picture just from the data, just from the graphs and from the force. But because we've got the ability to actually synchronize it with video, we can see visually when the power is being won and lost. And again, this has got a lot of information on here, so you can see the 4 laps here. See the 4 laps. We're just going to zoom into lap 1 for this particular example. And at the bottom here, you can select each one of these tabs. So the bottom one is total force, or the first one, sorry, I should say total force. So if we take the propulsive out, total force, and then you've got propulsive. So how much power is actually making you go forwards, your propulsion. Then you've got vertical power. So that's going to be pushing down and a little bit up as well. And then lateral, which is obviously side-to-side movement as well, if you want to go into detail on that. But we're just going to concentrate on the propulsive element today. So just select that, wait for it to catch up a little bit. And then this is already synchronized. So I've already synchronized the video. There's quite a neat way of synchronizing the video. I won't go into that on this video. Maybe do a different video for that in terms of setting up and how to use it and things. But we've already synchronized it. We just get the lights to flash at a certain time. We synchronize the video, and then the computer system or the software knows exactly where the video needs to start, so it's in line with the data. So if we zoom right in, let's go, I don't know, let's go, just pick something in the middle here. Try and avoid the first few and the last few strokes. Just going to zoom into that little section there. Turn off the lateral. Oops, let's try that again. So zoom in here. And as we can see, we have 2 strokes. So in fact, I'll turn off the left first of all. So we're just looking at right-hand strokes. Zoom in again. Looking at right-hand strokes. Now, first glance, this looks quite complicated, and you might not obviously be aware of what that is. But once we start to break it down, it becomes quite straightforward. So if I press the time, put the timeline right there, then, and we can see the video is kind of updating here. And what it's doing is it's finding that particular point. So I'm just going to make this large. So view picture in picture. I'm going to zoom out. So there we go. So we've got a much bigger picture. And as you can see there, we use the controls up here. So show all controls. Just pause that a second, and we'll take it back here again. So this particular part of the video happens to be underwater, but I know during this analysis there was video beside and above and all over the place. So this particular section is below the water. So this little bump here on the power line is the hand entry on the right-hand side. You can see it's a blue line. We've got right selected. If we take it frame by frame, here's the hand entry. So you can just see the hand coming into the water there. I can't mouse over because as soon as I mouse over, it goes black. But you can just see the hand coming in, the right hand coming in, and that's this power spike here. So there's a little power spike as the sensors detect the hand entering the water. We play it forwards. Now, remember we looked at the right-hand side and we saw it slice across sideways and down. Now, actual fact, what that's doing is it's generating zero propulsive force. So we can see this is the zero line, generating no propulsive force whatsoever there. In fact, there's a bit of negative force. So there's actually kind of a bit of drag being generated there. And it's not until we get to this point. So you can see the hand just gets deeper. So this, just to run through. So if you look at the video there, and this is where it becomes really powerful because you can see exactly what's happening. The hand enters the water, extends forward, got no force there. There's a little flat patch. The hand glides and extends at the front of the stroke, and there's zero power. Just as the hand starts to engage and go into a catch here, we get the negative propulsion, and that's because the back of the hand is being pushed towards the water there. So then we start to catch the water, and the power rises right the way up, and you can see the most powerful part of the stroke is almost the deepest part of the stroke there. So we've got a big power spike, and then as the stroke progresses through, the power drops back off again on this particular stroke until such time as the hand leaves the water, and then we're back to zero again. And then we're going to recover over the top, and as it hits that spike, the hand comes back in. So you can see quite clearly there how it's synchronized and how you can really see clearly where the power is and where the power isn't, or where it should be. And from that, it makes it a whole lot easier to decide what the kind of the main issues are for this swimmer for us to work on. And that's going to be, well, there's a couple of things there. When the hand enters the water, we need to try and stop that slice out, because that's not giving us anything. It's just effectively the hand is ending up in the wrong position. So it's having to pull out wide and slice and not get really good traction on the water. And we're getting nothing from that. So ideally, we want to be spearing into the water so the hand ultimately ends at the end of the extension in a position where we can break at the elbow and immediately start that propulsive phase and then push the water back. So what this swimmer is doing is the hand is entering and it's slicing sideways from the right-hand side to the left-hand side, and then she's pulling out wider and not getting any actual power and traction till it gets quite deep in the water. So I hope you find that interesting. I think it's really interesting to see this and really kind of break it down exactly what's happening. What we can actually look at here is if I just kind of zoom back out, let's try and find here we go. So if we go to this particular stroke here, and you can see quite frequently you have big dips in the actual middle of the catch. So if we go back to the same point on this is probably going to be out of the water or maybe above. Let's have a look. Here we go. So we're above the water this time. The same thing. So the hand enters the water. There's the spike in on the right-hand side. We've got the slice, which we've already seen. Now, what we could do is have a look under the water for this thing to happen, because obviously we can't see it very well when the camera is above. But if I just kind of explain it to you what's happening here. So the hand starts the catch. We've got a big power spike, and that is where the hand is at the deepest point. and I'll show you something else just to kind of further illustrate this in a second. Then we lose a load of traction halfway through the stroke. So I know that is going to be just past the deepest point underneath the water, where what's likely happening is the hand is turning sideways or it's slicing through the water rather than keeping that the pressure on the palm and the water engaged all the way back. The water is slipping, and again, we're losing traction in the water. We can see the power drop right off, and then the power pulls back up again as the swimmer finishes the back of the stroke with an extension at the back there. And then obviously the hand leaves the water again. So if I just kind of, while we've got that fresh in mind, in fact, if I just zoom out there, what we can do is have a look at that particular stroke on this next tab, the stroke path and force. I'm just going to count up these and just see if we can find the same one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It looks like the 13th stroke on lap 2, I think it was. 13th stroke on lap 2. So if we go to this stroke path and force, close the video. So on the stroke path and force page, you can see what we've got here. We've got the ability to select individual strokes and then look at that alongside the actual stroke path graphics here. So on the stroke we're talking about, so this is stroke number 12 on the right hand side, lap number 1 it was actually. We can see as we play this through, we've got hand entry over here. So the red dot goes forwards, hand entry. And as we know, the hand slices across the water. And if we have a look overhead, we can see that the hand slices sideways. And all the way through that part, this sideways slice, we've got 0 propulsion. Actually, we're going into negative propulsion there. And then we start to pull through. And here's the first peak of the power there. And we're kind of mid-phase on the pull. If we have a look at side on, we can see how deep it is. That's the deepest point. And then as we continue through, we've got a big drop off in power between that point there and the next point further around the through the pull. We've got a big drop off in power, and then we've got a ramp up in power again. So it goes right the way back up. So they've got a big drop off here, and this is really common to see this in swimmers as the hand kind of transitions through the different phases in the pull through underneath the water. Sometimes the hand starts to be elbow led, sometimes the hand slices sideways through the water, but either way you can see a big drop in power. If we have a look head on, we can also see what's happening. So again, the hand enters the water. There's the phase where there's no traction, no propulsion. We then go to the deepest point where we hit the peak power. We then come up and then slice back out or cut back out, and this is when we hit peak power here. So there's a big change between this point, the 2 peak points. Even just, I mean, we can the timing is on the graphic there. So 0.79 of a second up to 0.106 of a second. So a quarter of a second. In that quarter of a second, we've got a big loss of power. Now, this is really powerful because it means if we can identify when that's happening in a swimmer's stroke, and we clearly can from this, then it's something we can work on to see if we can iron out those spikes. Now, if we go to, let's try a different lap and just see if we can see a better one. And it's not happening every time, but it's happening frequently enough for us to work on. So as you can see, some of these strokes are slightly different, and this is more like what we want. So we want a big spike and then straight back down again. We don't want that big drop off in power in the center. So what I'd get that swimmer to do, think about it in conjunction with what they're doing, is they're slicing sideways with the right going left. They're losing power as they slice sideways, and then they're pulling back. They're getting power as they get deep, and then they're losing power kind of mid-phase, and then they're getting power back towards the rear. So I'd work with that swimmer, and we've already started working on this, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you another video with a much more kind of with the kind of after, if you like. But hopefully this just demonstrates how well this software works for identifying issues. So what we're going to be doing is making sure that the recovery enters the water in a slightly different position, so a wider out position outside of the shoulder line, so that when the swimmer rotates, the extension finishes in front of the shoulder. Work on a good break, so an initial catch, and then making sure that the swimmer maintains pressure on that palm and then drives with a high elbow, the good 100-degree elbow angle in the elbow here to keep the good powerful position, and then push that hand straight the way back and keep that drive all the way through. And that should take out the slice and take out the dead spot at the front of the stroke and actually generate power earlier and then push the way back and keep the power spike or the power surge consistent so we don't have a big dead spot in the middle of it. So there's two things that we are going to work on with this swimmer. So there's the slice, the sideways slice and the dead spot, and then the loss of power in the middle of the stroke. And that's just on the right-hand side. There are elements on the left-hand side we need to work on, and there's all sorts of other things that we can get stuck into. So I hope you can see from this demonstration how much detail that we can go into. And these are big things that we can get stuck into. There's lots of power to be generated there. And we can go straight the way back to the stroke rate and force page, and we can retest. Sorry, not stroke rate and force page. Straight back to the force field page, and we can say, I want you to try getting a higher elbow or maintaining a more of a kind of a conscious catch and push back towards the back of the stroke, and see how those numbers change. Actually, you can get them to do the analysis, swim with the devices on their hands, and you can download it poolside and have a look straight away and see how it changes. So it's really powerful and very, very worthwhile doing. And that's it. I'd love to know what you think about the EO Swim Better. Have you used one? And if so, how did you get on with it? Leave a comment down below. And like I say, we'd love to hear from you. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. If so, please consider hitting that subscribe button and press the bell to be notified of our new videos. Yes, I nearly forgot. If you fancy being in with a shot of getting a free swim dynamics assessment, subscribe and share this video to your socials with the hashtag Do3SwimBetter, and we'll pick out a lucky winner. That's it. I'll see you in the next one.